Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. And somewhere along the way in life, I got the idea that my value as a person was tied to my ability to change the world around me. And I had this idea that it was my responsibility to make some kind of change. And this is, if you look at the messages that we get in society today, this is somewhat reinforced by that. And that's not to say that making contributions that change society is unimportant. It is important. But I think some of us get this message twisted a little bit. And we stop accepting the world the way that it is. And that's where we start having a little bit of problems. And that's where we start getting some pain introduced into our lives that contributes to some of the unrest, the irritability, the discontentment that is such a huge part of what's often referred to as the spiritual malady that drives the addiction that we've got. So I'm going to read a little bit from The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, talk some about accepting the world around us. And the first thing I'll read is on page 104. He says, "Wise beings do not want to remain a slave to the fear of pain. They permit the world to be what it is instead of being afraid of it." And this was a big idea for me when I first read it. I really had not given much thought to letting the world be what it was instead of being afraid of it. My default mode in my addiction, and still today, I'm still working with this. My default mode is to judge the world around me and then try to control it and to try to prevent it from causing me any kind of pain. And this causes a lot of problems for me and for anybody else who's doing the same thing. Because as one of my mentors in my recovery says, what we resist persists. So as we push against these things, as we push against the world as it is, as we push against the emotions that we're feeling, as we try to avoid anything in life, it pushes back on us and it creates a tension that has to be resolved one way or another, or else it just kind of boils within us. And if it boils within us, that's what creates things like resentments, self-pity, um, things like that. And so we've got to allow things to be what they are. And this is where we get into one of the most important ideas of a lot of recovery programs, which is acceptance of things the way they are. Now, this doesn't just happen with the world around us. We've got to do this with the emotions that we feel as well. And I've been experiencing this a lot recently. I have been having a lot of negative emotions, and I before I can catch myself, I find myself pushing them away, trying to get rid of them. And what Singer is suggesting in his book is we need to just let these be. Let these emotions be and let them pass through us. Just allow them to pass through. He says, when you feel pain, simply view it as energy. Just start seeing those inner experiences as energy passing through your heart and before the eye of your consciousness. Then relax. Do the opposite of contracting and closing. Relax and release. And I've got to remember this. And this is where mindful meditation is very helpful in practicing this. And I've talked about this recently, but one of the ways of practicing mindful meditation is that when you focus on your breath, focus on the in and the out of the breath, the feeling of the breath, the coolness as it comes in, the warm breath as you release it. And what most people will find is that as they're doing this, their thoughts start to wander. And they'll start to think about, well, what am I going to have for breakfast? Am I going to be to work on time? Do I really want to go to work today? I don't know. And their mind will wander. And so in mindfulness meditation, you gently bring yourself back to focusing on the breathing, and you let those thoughts go. You just watch. You don't try to resist them. You don't try to push them away. You just watch them and let them go. And that's a good practice for what Singer is talking about here when he says, just relax, relax and release. Relax, let the thoughts go. Not every painful thought that you have deserves your attention. Sometimes your brain, and science has proven this, sometimes your brain just does stuff that doesn't serve a purpose. Let it go. Not every thought you have deserves attention. And so it's really important, especially in recovery. A lot of us will have very chatty minds. A lot of us use drugs and alcohol in order to quiet our minds. I grew up with obsessive compulsive disorder. As I grew older, I developed anxiety, had panic attacks, and drugs and alcohol helped quiet all that a little bit and helped dull my mind some. And so in recovery, I find that more active mind space a little disturbing sometimes. And if I'm not careful, I'll push against it and try to get it to stop instead of just allowing it to pass by. And so we've got to recognize the difference between resisting it and trying to get it to stop, and just letting it be and letting it do its thing. And then the middle ground, I think, which is dwelling on it and living there with it. And if we can just learn to let go and relax and let it pass through us, then we get a level of freedom that we couldn't experience with the drugs and alcohol, which just kind of dulled it all. It just kind of allowed us to dull it down and had all these detrimental effects as well. So that's the key for me these days. I've got to recognize that pain and discomfort and all of these feelings that I have that I don't necessarily want, it's not necessarily my choice. They're there. So if I can just let them be, let them pass through, then that's a better alternative than trying to resist them and put energy into avoiding them and controlling them. Because at the end of the day, as my experience has shown me, my ability to control what happens in my brain is pretty limited. So what's better is for me to take a little bit of a more active, conscious role in terms of deciding what I am and am not going to get engaged with. And it's the same with my brain. It's the same with real life. What am I going to allow to be in real life, and what am I going to get engaged with? And that decision about how am I going to engage, what am I going to engage, and what am I going to allow becomes a centerpiece for my recovery as I continue going through it these days. So that's it for today. I will be back here tomorrow with more. In the meantime, I hope you have a good one.